Hello, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen. This is Nishant, and welcome to another episode of the Nishant Garg Show. This show is for people who want to live a fulfilled life through mindfulness practices and personal transformation. My job on the show is to invite world class performers to share the practices to live a fulfilled life. And this episode guest is Oleg. The memories made in the first 12 years of his life were painted with shades of poverty, loss, and a dim hope for a better life, a hope that acted as his only survival method. He said goodbye to his birth mother at the age of 12, not realizing that he would never see her again. He never met his father. He learned early on what alcoholism is, what starvation feels like, and what sacrifice means. For him, it took leaving the place he called home to find a better life in America. It took saying goodbye to his mother, sister, relatives, and friends, and saying hello to a new set of family and friends. Adoption changed his life. Adoption opened a door into a new world and forced him to close the door to everything he had ever owned. He is here today to tell his story, the story of how he overcame his own odds. Now let the episode begin. Oleg, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me as a guest.
My pleasure. You are founder of Overcoming Arts. You have spoken at TEDx. You have shared your story with thousands of people. And your company, Overcoming Arts, is a non-profit organization. Can you please share your journey with our listeners? How did you get here?
Absolutely. And I'll try to keep this concise because it has been as a journey, if that's the best way to put it. For me, the journey started in a foreign country, as you might be able to relate in some of the listeners. And that is, I wasn't born in the United States. I was born in a town in Russia and had lived there for my first 12 years of my life. And during those 12 years, I had experienced, I guess you could say, a rather different style of living when it came to a household, set of parents, and also different forms of adversities that I faced as a young kid. And so one thing led to another, and to keep this concise, my first 9 years of my life were very difficult and very challenging. And the reason why I say that is because my father was absent from birth. There's still some mixed stories as far as who he was or where he was during that time. My mother was an alcoholic, and my sister actually ended up becoming my legal guardian from a very young age. And part of that journey, what included for me, was wanting to bring back my family all together under one roof, and ultimately wasn't able to do so because my sister and my mom resented each other due to the decisions that my mom had made as far as giving me up to my sister and giving her the custody and making her the responsible one as far as taking care of for me. And what I learned within that moment was that even though I was desperately trying to bring the two of them back together, that the challenge that I was facing was that there simply wasn't going to be a way where I could bring them all under one roof. So part of it, I witnessed things that I think many people don't see when they're young. And fast forward to when I was 9 years old, I decided to take a different path within my life and actually give up my parents' rights and go into a Russian orphanage. The reason why I made that decision was because at the time I believed that the orphanage was going to be a better place for me to live at compared to the household that I was a part of at the time. And so I ended up living in the orphanage for 3 years, and it was actually through that system that I was able to be a part of I guess you could say, an exchange program that brought us here to the States and gave us some opportunities to present folk songs in front of future adopted parents who later on became my family. So as a 12-year-old kid in 2005, I was finally adopted by a family from Ann Arbor, Michigan, and ended up coming to the States. Didn't speak any English, didn't know almost anything about this part of the world, but always had this ability and mindset that I could figure it out. Was always driven enough that no matter what the adversity or what the challenge was, that I would find a way to get through those current obstacles. So one thing led to another, And I continued to grow through the different adversities. And within about 3 to 4 years, I finally got a grasp of the culture, the language, and everything else that came with these new changes and this new transition that I had to make. And that's when I first began to dive deeper into this question and area of why me? Why was I the one that ultimately overcame a lot of these challenges, and what can I learn from them? What I began to realize was that there were so many other people around me who had faced similar circumstances, but weren't able to work or overcome the same obstacles. And that's where I think my first curiosity initially developed, as far as wanting to understand farther, and that is, what makes me special, what makes me unique, and how can I add value to people who may not have found ways to work through the things that I've worked through. And that is the journey, or that was the official beginning to this organization and this mission of overcoming odds. That is something I started when I was 24 years old. And I started this organization for a couple reasons. First one,
what is the name of the organization?
It's called Overcoming Odds. And the mission of it, at the core, is to provide a space for people to be seen, to be heard, and to be valued. Initially, it started off as a space for adoptees and foster youth to be able to experience all three of those things, in addition to embracing their own journeys. What I've realized since was, after about 50 to 60 to 100 stories of people submitting through our website, I began to notice that this message speaks to so many more, so many other groups, refugees, immigrants, LGBTQ, and that's where we decided to take the next step forward and really expand this mission and open it up to as many groups and demographics as possible. And that's what I've done ever since, is really focus a lot of my efforts and work on creating spaces for all individuals who have faced hardships or challenges within their lives, to be able to understand that ultimately at the end of the day, they're not alone throughout their journey.
Oleg, you mentioned that you had some unique skills when you were younger, and a lot of people are going through tough times. They are struggling in their lives since childhood, and not many can take action to move forward. They feel stuck, but you took that action. You moved to Russian orphanage. Not many has that caliber or courage or confidence to take that faith of you. So what was that unique thing inside you?
I think there are many things in answer to that question. The first one that I would say is something that I recognized later on in life, and that is drive. I firmly believe that one of the first people that taught me what drive was my birth mom. And the reason why I say that is because when I used to go out there looking for her in the streets or wherever she was at that particular time during my early upbringing, and I was coming up short 9 times out of 10 as far as the different apartments or places that would go and look for her, the message that I continued to repeat in my head, and that is, if I just go to one more place, if I just talk to one more person, I might find her, is the same exact message that I actually repeat to myself even today. So I think a lot of the skills that I've learned from those moments of tragedy have become my foundational principles that I live by every single day. And so when it comes to answering your question, I don't think it's any specific skill. And if it was, then I think life would be a lot easier to work through. I think it's a combination of all of the experiences, all of the events, all of the people that have come into my life. Part of my journey, what I've realized that I've become great at, is my ability to stay observant and I think not judge and rather accept people for their opinions and the different things that they share.
And when we are small, in our younger age, we don't even know about those skills. We just follow our intuition. We just follow our heart. because we are authentic and vulnerable. There is no layer of conditioning when we are small, and we just do whatever feel like. And in my personal case, I was teased and bullied in my school, because I was hardworking. In fact, this morning I was thinking, what has been the number one thing that is keeping me moving forward all the time, even though I fail every single time. Failure is a part of the process. That hard work, putting the hard work, not giving up easily whenever things are tough.
And I think and here's one thing that I'll add on to your story, is that whatever we thought the skill or the method that got us through that particular time at that given moment may not be the same thing that we think of right now. And the reason why is because your story changes as you go through it. Every new experience gives you another perspective to look at your experiences or events that you went through. That's why I ultimately do believe that reframing and narrative therapy does work, because the story that I was born into and the story that I experienced as a 9 and 12-year-old and so forth doesn't have to be the story that I experience today. And the reason for that is because I've been very fortunate to surround myself with people and books and and a bunch of other resources that have really helped me shape this perspective and understand that whatever my past was, it doesn't have to be my present or my future.
And this is unfortunate that a lot of people live in that old story, that this is not for me, I'm not good enough, I'm not confident enough to do it. This is for millionaires, billionaires, or whatever it happens to be. So what would you recommend to people who are still living in their old stories? They know something is not working, but still adhering to their old story.
Well, first things first is for me, I'm a big believer in it's possible. And the reason why I say it's possible is because I firmly believe that it's possible to reinvent your story and tell it from a completely different perspective. So with that belief, I also understand that there is a process, and every single process for each individual is going to be different. So the steps that I took in sharing my story and developing confidence and courage with it may be completely different from the steps that you're going to have to take. But if there's anything that I've learned, it is that stepping into that narrative and ultimately asking myself the question about some of those previous experiences as far as, are they true, and do I want to live this truth? So part of the storytelling, I think, is getting comfortable with living your truth. And the one thing that I've learned about truth is this: truth is whatever you believe it to be. So your truth can change. Your truth can evolve. As far as the specific steps that I would recommend for people when it comes to sharing their story in different perspectives, I don't have a specific one in mind. Rather, what I do have is an understanding that I went through, and that is literally writing down on paper all of my past experiences. And then that gave me a chance to look at each and every single one of them and analyze. Exactly. Journaling and analyze, how do I view those experiences and how are they impacting, and which of them am I still carrying forward throughout this experience that I'm going through right now.
We all have a story, and people feel that our story is not worthy enough to be heard. But everyone has a story. We all have a story, and everyone's story can bring us to our knees. And that is what Brené Brown talks about. We all have a story. Yeah. And when we share our story, it can instill confidence and courage in someone else.
Yeah.
And speaking of your TEDx, your topic was how to overcome your odds. Can you shed some light on that specific topic?
So for me, I don't remember the topic exactly here. So you're
how to overcome your odds.
This is almost like a pop quiz I'm going through. For me, the reason why I chose that topic was I wanted to tell my story in a concise fashion, and I believe at the time I used 4 principles to tell this particular narrative and the journey that I had from being born in Russia and then ultimately coming to the United States. What I decided to do for that particular talk was split it into 4 segments, and I think some of those segments were being resourceful, being in the present, believing in the possibility, and then choosing to act on everything that I've known prior to that moment. So the reason why I broke it down into that was I remember the first part when I spoke about being resourceful. The thing that I experienced through telling that story was that all of those elements of hardship and adversity that I had faced, what they ultimately taught me, along with many other skills, is how to be resourceful with what I had. So in moments where I barely had enough food, I had to figure out how to survive off of a loaf of bread or whatever it may be. And what I've learned over time is that it is all of those things that I've actually carried forward with me. Even in today's day and age, when I may not have a certain thing, what I do is put myself in a situation where I was that younger self and look at that resource in a way that I can maximize its full potential. So I chose to tell that story in that particular format, once again, is to share with people the different experiences that I went through, but ultimately help people understand that there is a possibility and there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And in the midst of the challenge, it doesn't seem like there is, but what I've learned is that it always exists in some form or some fashion.
Do you think sharing our story can be daunting for people?
I think so. I think it could be sometimes. I think part of it is because depending on how you're sharing your story, what I've learned is that having been interviewed hundreds and hundreds of times, the story that seems compelling to a lot of people is the story of the young boy who had gone through all the challenges and made it to the other side. For me, what has changed is this. That story of a kid who was a 9 or 12-year-old is so distant. And the reason why I say it is because I've actively worked on it for past 10 to 12 to 14 years on reframing it and understanding it from different views, different perspectives. So what ends up happening is over time, the story of a victim actually does turn into a story of a victor or a hero. And so your narrative changes completely. And the other thing that I've learned about stories is this. So many times do I think we focus on the story of the past. But we also have to understand that there's also the story of the present, so the things that you're going through right now, and there's also the story of the future. And with those three things in mind, I think you have a choice. In which story do you focus your efforts on? The past, the present, or the future? Because wherever you put your focus in, that's who you're going to become.
Energy flows where focus goes.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about the stories about past, but this is new to me as well. Thanks for sharing this. That stories about present and stories about future. We can visualize who we want to be in the future. And part of any goal setting is becoming a new person, becoming a newer version of ourselves.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing that I think is important to also understand, that visualization gives you a chance to not only recreate your story from a completely different point of view, but also envision yourself for something different, something that you didn't even think was possible. And that is interesting to me for multiple reasons. First one is that it's a true example of not only seeing something through, but envisioning something that once upon a time seemed impossible. And so when I redefine that label for myself, as far as there is no such thing as impossible. The only impossible thought that I may have is the one that A, I haven't experienced before, or B, I haven't done before. And then through action, I was able to prove to myself that all the things that I dream of, all the things that I envision or set forth as goals, they are possible. I can achieve each and every single one of them.
From point A to point B, there are so many steps. And sometimes people get pumped up after listening to any motivational speech. And there is no action behind that. So what do you think could be the obstacle in not taking any action? They know they have a big dream, they are visualizing, they are doing the right things, but sometimes, that we get stuck and not able to move forward.
I think one of those things is being overwhelmed by the dream. I don't know if you've ever experienced this.
All the time.
When you dream of something that seems so much bigger than your current life, it becomes very difficult for you to even understand, where do you begin with that? What's the first step that you take? Because here's the thing, what I've learned about the action and the how and the map and the answers that I think a lot of us are seeking for in life is what's important is to not know the entire how, but rather just to know the first step. And then the step beyond that, the step beyond that. And you figure those steps beyond each one through acting, through action, movement. There's a video that I watched recently which has stood out to me ever since. And it's during that 3-minute segment, the speaker says, life is favorable to those who are willing to keep moving.
Who is the speaker?
I think it was Darren Roberts. He's a friend of mine, or a connection of mine that on LinkedIn, and I remember thinking through it, and it just made so much sense to me, because when you think about how universe or energy or whatever the higher power that you believe in inspires to you and actually helps you build your dream and your vision, you're always co-creating. So if you're moving forward, then whatever the energy or whatever the thing that's guiding you in a way is going to keep moving forward as well.
This is very profound, that we always get overwhelmed by the big dream. And the irony is to take one baby step every single day, one step at a time. And we don't have to know all the big picture. And there is a saying that journey of 1,000 miles begin with the first step.
Yeah.
And it happens with us all the time. So I would like to ask you, whenever you get into that overwhelmed state because of your dream or anything else in life, so how do you overcome that feeling of overwhelmed or unfocused?
I think most of the time I just take a step back and allow myself to reflect on the whole dream. I also allow myself to understand that that dream doesn't have to be accomplished in one day, that some dreams, in fact, most dreams, take significantly longer than just the 24 hours.
All the time.
Some dreams may take years, 5 to 10 years to build. And that's the thing that I've learned is really learning how to be patient with the process of building your dreams, building your visions. And when you look at a lot of the people who have accomplished anything that is of great value to the society, it took them 10, 15, 20, some even 30 to 40 years. But yet our expectation is to get it done within 24 hours.
There is no quick fix. It's not going to happen overnight. And when we see somebody who is successful, they have not become successful overnight. They have put in a lot of time behind that. And there comes a point we become successful, or everybody has different definition of success. Somebody tags money with the success. Somebody assigns peace, calm. Everybody has different definition of success. So what's your definition of success now?
I think for me, success is something, I think part of my definition is that it's a choice. And the reason why I say is this. I think every single day I have a choice as far as waking up in the morning and telling myself that I'm already successful. And the reason why is because I firmly believe that success, it's not a final destination. Success is a process. And so when we think about the different things that success ultimately is, fancy cars, money, new house, to me it's never been like that. Or maybe it has been once upon a time, and then my definition evolved and changed, and it made me realize that the important thing in life is to focus more on the journey than some final step or destination within this life.
And it's all about discovering our inner self as we keep moving further. And we always keep discovering our self all the time. And this is discovering is one of your mission components, right?
Correct.
So, and you have 4 components. You can correct me if I'm wrong: resilience, network, authenticity, and discovery.
Yep.
Can you touch on resilience, because this is very important in these days?
Absolutely. Well, resilience, I believe that it's something that each and every single one of us has. And the reason why I say this is because even during the current times that we're experiencing, not only as a city, as a nation, but ultimately the world, and that is everything that has to do with the coronavirus and how it's impacting our lives. It is this. If you think about your own life, you've already had plenty of obstacles prior to this. So what I began to realize when this particular challenge came about is that I've already faced a lot of the challenges and obstacles within my life. This is not my first time coming in contact with one. And what I learned from this particular moment was the importance of keeping the mindset of continuing to look for opportunities within moments of adversity. I think it's a challenge to do that. Don't get me wrong. It is a mindset that gets developed over time. But what I've learned is that the more that I can ask myself the question of, what is this current challenge making me see now that I haven't seen before? What is it making me see differently? What can I do now that maybe I wasn't able to do before? Those are some of the questions that are ultimately able to put me in windows of opportunity. And then the resilience, as far as the drive and perseverance, allows me to create action from those questions that I ask myself.
And in those tough times, This is a great point that you just mentioned. We can ask ourselves good questions and journal on it. We can always find answers to the good question.
Yeah.
And that's what the resilience is. Bounce back factor. What's your bounce back factor? If you are stuck in a bad situation, choice number one is to keep in that situation. You are stuck in that situation for a long time. If somebody who has developed good resilience factor, you can come out of it quickly. Everybody goes through tough times, but you don't have to live in that tough time. You can come out of it and finding opportunities, being optimistic in that, and embracing those tough times. You don't have to be positive all the time. It's okay to feel negativity, feel that you are struggling, accepting that current situation, and finding positive and finding opportunity and looking forward to the future.
Yeah. And I think the one thing that you mentioned that's important in noting it is that during tough times, the best thing that I've learned that I can do is just keep moving forward. Even if it's a small step or what appears to be a small step in the right direction.
Do you ever get self-doubts?
A step is better than no step.
Do you ever get self-doubts? Keeping moving forward?
It's sometimes it's a challenge. It's a challenge to remind yourself, but what I've learned is that it's really one of the only things that's always available to us, is that ability to keep doing that. So it's challenging because there are real things that happen. The doubt creeps in and it tells you, well, you said this last time and nothing has changed. Or you said this yesterday and nothing has changed things. And that's where I think I continue to remind myself once again that all of this is a process. None of it ever, very rarely gets changed in one day. Even in a week, I think you can get different opportunities. I think you can create certain opportunities. But as far as how all of them unfold, I don't know if you have control over any of that.
We don't have control on the circumstances. We can only control ourselves.
And how we react to them, yep.
So as part of this whole process, do you have a specific morning routine?
For me, I think the morning routine consists of reading, writing, and meditating. And the latest book right now that I'm reading is called The Alchemist.
It's a very old book.
It is. It sure is. And it's a book that I read a couple years ago and I wanted to return back to it. The reason why is because there's so many different messages that I take away from it as far as different ways to approach life, different ways to approach obstacles, and different ways to approach the process of becoming. And one of the messages that I've learned recently from reading the most recent chapter is this. Anything you want to find, it's out there somewhere. Through action, I think that's where you find that thing. So reading gives me an opportunity to reflect not only upon my own life, but also learn different things about or different approaches to life, questions or methods for how I can live. And then journaling is just another way to process a lot of that. And the final thing that I mentioned is meditation, which I'm sure it's something that you're aware of as well. And that's really just gaining clarity.
And what kind of meditation is that?
For me, the meditation really just consists of sitting down with my own thoughts. I started experimenting with different ones. So one of the ones that I just recently heard of is meditation with affirmations. And that's actually either listening to a video or to an audio that repeats different affirmations about who you are for a set period of time. Or the other thing that I've done recently is tell those affirmations to myself.
And affirmations are a great tool to rewrite your story, rewrite your negative story. We keep getting those negative words on and off. So with those affirmations, we can affirm some positive words to our brain, because brain doesn't understand the reality.
Right.
Is there any other book that comes to your mind that has impacted you the most?
Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, Outwitting the Devil, Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki.
Evergreen books. And in your as part of your mission, how can people contribute? Is there any way, nationally, internationally?
The best way that people can help us is obviously by going through our website, and that is overcomingodds.today. The forms of contribution that people can take a part in first is sharing their story. So a story of an adversity or a challenge they went through and different ways that they've been able to work through them or overcome them. The second one is that we host events around the country that people can be a part of. Due to the current circumstances, we will not be hosting in-person events. We're considering of hosting a virtual event in a couple months. And really what these events are is about creating spaces for people to be able to relate to their own individual journeys and wherever they are in life, and identify tools and methods throughout their own experience that they can rely on and tap into and share with others. So those are probably the best ways that people can get in touch and learn more about what we're doing. And I think the place that they could start is probably through either our website, and as I mentioned before, it's overcomingodds.today, or any of these social media platforms by simply searching Overcoming Odds.
I will put all these links in the show notes.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Well, before we end this conversation, I would like to ask you my last question. What is the impact you want to have on this world?
What is the impact I want to have on this world? For me, the impact and how I approach impact to begin with is one person at a time, one day at a time. I think it's the only thing that if control is something that exists, that I can control. And that is, I can control how I react to the situation, and I can control my presence and my energy within that particular form. Beyond that, when it comes to impacting a great number of people, I think it's more of a belief. And what this mindset of one person at a time, one day at a time allowed me to understand is really the focus and the energy that I could bring to each conversation. So each conversation is going to be different. Each interaction is going to be different. But the one thing that I think remains the same is the person that I choose to show up each and every single time.
That is very powerful, Oleg. Thank you so much for being on the show. It's been an amazing conversation so far.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to this podcast episode today. I hope you learned from this episode that you can apply in your life. If you did enjoy this, please subscribe to the podcast, The Nishant Garg Show, on Apple Podcast. You can also subscribe to the show through my website, https://nishantgarg.me, NISHANTGARG.me. You can also share this podcast with your family and friends or whoever want to feel fulfilled. And thank you so much again.